Hello, my dear friends. Take a slow breath and allow your body to relax. There is nothing you need to do right now. Nothing you need to remember. Just listen and let the story move gently around you. Tonight we are stepping into a very different world. A world without dating apps, without private messages, without choice in the way we understand it today. Tonight, we are exploring what dating was like in medieval times, when relationships were shaped not by love, but by duty, survival, and family decisions. As you listen, imagine stone streets, wooden homes, soft candlelight, and a slow pace of life where every decision carried weight. This is not a story of excitement or passion. It is a quiet look at how people came together in a world where romance was rare and privacy was almost unknown. Imagine waking up in a medieval village. You are not thinking about who you like or who you might meet. Your day begins with work, responsibility, and family expectations. In medieval society, dating as we know it did not exist. There were no casual meetings, no getting to know someone slowly over time. Relationships were often arranged, discussed, and decided by families long before two people ever spoke to each other in private. Love was not the starting point. Stability was. Marriage was not about emotion. It was about survival. Families used marriage to secure land, strengthen alliances, or ensure protection. If you were a woman, your future was often decided early, sometimes in childhood. If you were a man, your role was to provide, protect, and continue the family line. Personal feelings were secondary, sometimes ignored completely. This did not feel cruel at the time. It felt normal. Privacy was extremely rare. Homes were small. Families lived close together. Villages watched everyone. Any interaction between unmarried men and women was noticed quickly. A simple conversation could be questioned. A shared walk could become gossip. Because of this, relationships developed under constant observation. Silence and restraint were part of daily life. Courtship, when it happened, was formal and slow. A man might visit a woman's family home, always supervised. Conversations were polite, careful, and limited. There was no touching, no openness, no emotional sharing. Words mattered, and silence mattered even more. Many couples entered marriage barely knowing each other, carrying only expectations and duty into their shared life. For most people, the idea of choosing a partner freely was unimaginable. Life was hard, short, and uncertain. Survival came first. Romance, if it appeared at all, came later, sometimes quietly, sometimes never. Love was not promised. It was something that might grow slowly over time after marriage or not at all. As the night grows quiet, let this world settle gently in your mind. A world where dating was not about excitement, but about obligation. Where connection was shaped by structure, not desire. In the next part, we will slowly explore how young people met, how families controlled relationships, and how emotions were kept hidden beneath daily life. For now, remain still. Let the quiet deepen. Let rest continue in its own time. Imagine waking up in medieval times and realizing that love as we know it today is not something you search for. It is something that is decided around you. Dating does not begin with attraction or curiosity. It begins with family, land, and survival. In most medieval societies, especially for ordinary people, Marriage was not about romance. It was about stability. Parents, elders, and sometimes village leaders played the largest role in deciding who you would spend your life with. Feelings were considered unreliable. Love was expected to grow later, slowly, if at all. From a young age, boys and girls were quietly prepared for this reality. Girls were taught skills that would make them suitable wives, such as cooking, cleaning, spinning cloth, and caring for children. Boys were trained to work, protect, and provide. These lessons were not presented as preparation for love, but for duty. By the time people reached their teenage years, their future paths were already forming. Dating, in the modern sense of getting to know someone freely, did not exist for most people. Meetings between potential partners were usually supervised. A young man might see a young woman at church, at a market, or during a festival, but long private conversations were rare. Any interaction was observed closely. Families watched behavior carefully because reputation mattered more than emotion. A single rumor could damage a person's chances of marriage. Because of this, people learned to control their expressions, their words, and even where they looked. In wealthier families, marriage arrangements were even more structured. Property, alliances, and social status guided every decision. Love was not forbidden, but it was not required. Sometimes future spouses met only a few times before marriage. Sometimes they met for the first time on the wedding day. This was not considered cruel. It was normal. Life was uncertain, and marriage was meant to reduce risk, not increase it. For peasants and working families, there was sometimes slightly more freedom, but still within limits. A young couple might exchange glances, speak briefly while working nearby, or walk together under supervision. These moments were small and rare, but meaningful. Even so, the final decision almost always rested with families. If a match did not benefit both households, it was unlikely to happen. As the night grows quiet, imagine how different this feels. Love is not something you chase. It is something you accept. Feelings are private, often unspoken. Hope is quiet. Expectations are low. People enter relationships not dreaming of romance, but preparing for responsibility. This was the beginning of medieval dating. Slow, controlled, practical, quiet. In the next part, we will gently explore how people showed affection when they were not allowed to be alone, and how small gestures carried deep meaning. For now, remain still. Let the story rest softly in the background. Let the night continue its calm work. In medieval times, the idea of dating as we understand it today simply did not exist. Love was not something people searched for, and romance was not the starting point of relationships. Instead, life moved slowly and practically, and relationships were shaped by survival, family needs, and social rules. Most people did not choose their partners freely. Choices were limited by class, land, work, and family expectations. Marriage was seen as a duty rather than a personal dream, and emotional connection was something that might grow later, not something required at the beginning. For many people, especially common folk, relationships formed through daily life rather than planned meetings. A young man and woman might see each other while working in the fields, fetching water, or attending church. These moments were brief and supervised, often happening in public spaces where others were nearby. Private conversations were rare. Even simple eye contact could feel meaningful because opportunities were so limited. Attraction was quiet and cautious, never openly expressed. Families played a central role in deciding who married whom. Parents and elders believed they knew what was best, and their focus was on stability. They looked at land, skills, reputation, and family ties. Emotional compatibility was rarely discussed. A good match was one that promised food, shelter, and support. Love, if it came at all, was expected to grow after marriage, through shared hardship and routine. Among the nobility, dating looked different but was still tightly controlled. Marriages were arranged to secure alliances, power, and wealth. Young nobles might meet their future partners only a few times before marriage, sometimes not at all. Letters and formal visits replaced personal interaction. Feelings were secondary to strategy. Even so, people still felt emotions quietly, often keeping them hidden behind manners and rules. Because relationships were so restricted, romance found its way into small gestures. A glance during church, a shared smile at a festival, or a simple gift like a ribbon or flower could carry deep meaning. These moments were brief but powerful. They allowed people to feel connection without breaking social boundaries. Love, when it appeared, was subtle and patient. As the night grows quiet, imagine how different this world feels from today. Relationships moved slowly. Choices were limited. Emotions were often hidden. Dating was not about excitement or freedom, but about fitting into a life already decided. In the next part, we will gently explore how courtship rituals worked and how people expressed interest within strict social rules. For now, remain still. Let the quiet deepen. Let rest continue softly in its own time. In medieval times, dating was never private and it was never rushed. Courtship happened slowly, in full view of family, neighbors, and the wider community. A young man and woman were almost never left alone together. Every meeting, every conversation, and every small interaction was noticed and remembered by others. Love, if it grew at all, grew under observation. This constant watching shaped how people behaved. Words were chosen carefully. Gestures were small and controlled. Even silence had meaning. Most courtship began in familiar places. A village well, a church gathering, a market day, or a shared celebration. These moments were brief, often quiet, and rarely emotional. A glance held a little longer than usual. A few polite words exchanged while others stood nearby. There was no chance for deep conversation. Feelings had to grow slowly, often without being spoken aloud. Imagination filled the space where privacy did not exist. Families played a central role during this stage. Parents, especially fathers and older relatives, closely observed any sign of interest. They judged behavior, reputation, and social standing. A person's past actions mattered greatly. One careless moment could damage chances forever. Because of this, young people learned patience early. Courtship was not about excitement. It was about endurance and control. Gifts, when given, were simple and symbolic. A small piece of cloth, a ribbon, a flower, or a handmade object. These items were not expensive, but they carried meaning. Giving too much too soon was seen as improper. Everything had a pace. The slow rhythm protected families and reputations, but it also made emotional connection difficult. Feelings stayed quiet, often hidden, even from the people who felt them. Church rules shaped courtship deeply. Religious leaders taught modesty, restraint, and obedience. Touching was discouraged. Passion was considered dangerous outside marriage. Love was expected to grow after marriage, not before it. This belief placed pressure on both men and women to remain calm and controlled, even if emotions were strong inside. Because of all this, medieval dating felt restrained and heavy. There was little room for romance as we understand it today. Instead, there was careful behavior, quiet hope, and long waiting. Many relationships formed without ever truly knowing the other person deeply. Marriage often came before emotional closeness, not after. As the night grows quiet, imagine how slow and careful these early connections felt. No messages sent in secret, no private meetings, just patience, restraint, and long stretches of uncertainty. In the next part, we will gently explore how engagement and promises worked, and how easily a courtship could be stopped or changed by family decisions. For now, remain still. Let the quiet deepen. Let rest continue in its own time. In medieval times, one of the hardest parts of dating was the complete lack of privacy. Love did not grow in quiet, personal moments the way it often does today. Instead, relationships existed in the open, watched closely by family, neighbors, and the wider community. Young people were rarely left alone together. Conversations happened in shared spaces, under careful eyes, and often with others listening nearby. This constant observation shaped how emotions were expressed. Feelings had to be controlled, hidden, or softened because showing too much affection could bring gossip, shame, or punishment. Love grew slowly, not because people wanted it that way, but because they had no other choice. Dating was also deeply shaped by expectation. Love was not just about two people liking each other. It was about duty, reputation, and future stability. Families expected relationships to lead somewhere practical, usually marriage. A relationship without a clear purpose was seen as risky and irresponsible. Because of this, even early courtship carried a heavy seriousness. Every gesture, every word, and every meeting could be judged for what it meant for the future. This pressure made romance feel less playful and more cautious. People learned to protect themselves emotionally, because disappointment could carry real consequences. Emotional expression itself was limited by custom and belief. Open displays of affection were rare and often frowned upon, especially for women. Love letters, if they existed at all, were carefully written and often symbolic rather than direct. Poetry, small gifts, or subtle gestures were safer ways to express interest. Even then, these actions were often interpreted by others, not just the person they were meant for. This meant that love was rarely private. It belonged partly to the community, not just the couple. Class differences added another layer of difficulty. Relationships were expected to stay within social boundaries. Falling in love with someone from a different class could bring conflict, punishment, or separation. Because of this, many people learned early not to hope for certain relationships. Desire had to be shaped to fit what was allowed. This quiet adjustment of feelings was common and deeply ingrained. Love was not something people felt freely. It was something they learned to manage carefully. As you imagine dating in this world, notice how heavy it feels. Romance existed, but it was surrounded by rules, watchful eyes, and constant judgment. Love did not unfold in freedom. It unfolded within limits. This is another reason why dating in medieval times felt difficult and restrictive. Not because people felt less, but because they were rarely allowed to show it fully. As the night grows quiet now, allow this image to soften and fade. You do not need to hold on to it. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and gentle. Allow rest to continue calmly, without effort. By the time medieval dating reached its later stages, it slowly stopped looking like anything we would recognize today. What began as small meetings, shared looks, or family-approved conversations often led directly into marriage. Not because two people felt deeply connected, but because marriage itself was seen as a duty. In medieval society, marriage was not mainly about love. It was about survival, stability, and responsibility. Families needed alliances. Land needed protection. Labor needed to be shared. For most people, especially women, marriage was not a dream, but an expectation that quietly shaped their entire life. Imagine a young woman standing at the edge of this decision. She may have seen the man only a few times. She may know little about his personality, his habits, or his inner world. What she knows is what truly matters in medieval thinking. Whether he can provide food, whether his family is respectable, whether the match strengthens social ties. Emotional closeness is not discussed openly. Attraction is not questioned. The future is decided calmly, often without asking how she feels about it. This does not mean people felt nothing. It means feelings were considered less important than structure. For men, marriage also carried weight, though in a different way. A husband was expected to lead, provide, and represent his household. Choosing a wife was often guided by family advice and practical concerns. Love could come later, people believed, or it might never come at all. What mattered was order. A good marriage was one that worked, not one that felt exciting. Stability was valued far more than passion. Once marriage was arranged, the idea of dating ended completely. There was no period of getting to know each other slowly. Life moved quickly into shared work, shared space, and shared responsibility. Emotional intimacy, if it developed, did so quietly over time, shaped by routine rather than romance. Many couples learn to care for each other through years of shared hardship, not through courtship or choice. Religion reinforced this way of thinking. Marriage was seen as sacred, fixed, and unchanging. Once joined, separation was rare and discouraged. This made the decision even heavier. A single arrangement shaped an entire lifetime. Because of this, families took control, believing experience mattered more than individual emotion. Love was seen as unreliable, but structure was trusted. As you imagine this moment in medieval life, notice how calm and heavy it feels at the same time. There is no dramatic refusal, no emotional confession, no final choice based on the heart. Life moves forward quietly, guided by expectation rather than desire. This is one of the clearest ways medieval dating differs from modern life. It was not about finding the right person for your heart. It was about finding the right place in the world. As the night grows quieter now, let this image soften and fade. Let the weight of these old expectations drift away. Stay still. Let your breathing remain slow and gentle. In the next part, We will quietly explore what daily married life felt like after dating ended and responsibility began. As the days passed in the medieval world, dating continued to exist in a very quiet and limited way, shaped more by rules than by feelings. Love was not something people chased openly. It was something that grew slowly, often in silence, between moments of daily work and shared responsibility. A young man and a young woman might see each other at the village well, in the fields, or during church gatherings. These meetings were brief and watched closely. There was no freedom to walk together alone or speak for long. Even a short conversation carried weight, because it could be noticed and remembered by others. Families played a constant role in shaping these relationships. Parents, relatives, and elders watched closely, guiding interactions and setting limits. Dating was not about discovering who someone truly was inside. It was about whether two lives could fit together in practical ways. Could they work together? Could they survive together? Could they support a household? Feelings were secondary to these questions. Because of this, emotional expression stayed quiet and controlled. Smiles were small, words were careful, touch was rare and often forbidden. For many people, love grew not before marriage, but after it. Two people were brought together through family decisions, and only then did they begin to truly know each other. Dating, as we understand it today, did not exist as a separate stage of life. Instead, courtship blended into daily routine. Affection showed itself through shared labor, through helping hands, through patience rather than passion. Love was built slowly, like a habit, not sparked suddenly like a flame. This lack of choice created a calm but heavy feeling in relationships. People accepted their situation because there were few alternatives. Dreaming of someone far away or different was rarely useful. Life demanded focus on survival and stability. Romance existed, but it was shaped by reality. Songs and stories spoke of love, but real life moved more slowly and quietly than those tales suggested. As you imagine this gentle, limited world of medieval dating, notice how different it feels from modern life. There is no rush, no endless options, no constant searching. Just a small circle of people, familiar faces, and quiet expectations. Love did not shout. It whispered, and often it waited. As the night grows quiet now, allow this image to soften and fade. You do not need to remember every detail. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing slow gently. In the next part, we will move deeper into how marriage followed these early connections, always calmly, always slowly. For now, remain still. Let the quiet deepen. Let rest continue in its own time. As people moved deeper into relationships in medieval times, love often became quieter rather than louder. There were no dramatic confessions, no long conversations about feelings, and no open discussions about hopes or fears. Instead, emotions were carried silently, expressed through small actions rather than words. A shared glance across a room, the careful way someone stood nearby, or the quiet act of helping with daily work became the closest thing to affection. Love lived in routine, not excitement, and it grew slowly, shaped by patience rather than passion. For many, dating did not lead to choice but to acceptance. Once a match was decided by family or circumstance, people learned to adapt. Expectations were lowered and dreams were reshaped to fit reality. Romance, as we imagine it today, was rare. Instead, companionship became the goal. Two people learned how to exist together, share responsibilities, and survive daily life side by side. Over time, this practical closeness sometimes turned into a gentle form of affection, built not on desire, but on familiarity. Silence played a large role in these relationships. Long conversations were uncommon, especially between men and women before marriage. Social rules limited contact and privacy was rare. Because of this, much remained unspoken. Feelings were held inside, often never fully understood or expressed. This silence was not always painful. Sometimes it created calm. Other times it created distance. But it was accepted as part of life. Faith and duty also shaped how people understood love. Many believed that their partner was chosen by fate or by God. This belief made it easier to accept difficult situations. If happiness came, it was seen as a blessing. If it did not, it was seen as something to endure. Dating was not about finding personal fulfillment. It was about fitting into a larger order of life, family, and community. As years passed, people grew older within these arrangements. Youthful curiosity faded into routine. What began as uncertainty slowly turned into habit. Some found quiet comfort in this. Others felt a gentle sadness that never fully left. But most simply continued because continuing was expected. Love was not chased. It was lived with, in whatever form it took. As you imagine this quiet emotional world, notice how different it feels from modern dating. There is no rush, no choice overload, no pressure to feel a certain way. Just time, routine, and acceptance. This is another reason why dating in medieval times felt heavy and slow, shaped more by endurance than excitement. As the night grows quieter now, allow these thoughts to soften. Let the images fade gently. You do not need to hold on to them. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and calm. In the next part, we will gently move toward how marriage finally formed and how people settled into lifelong partnerships in this quiet world. For now, remain at rest. Let the silence carry you a little deeper into calm. As medieval life continued, one of the hardest truths about dating and relationships slowly became clear. Love was rarely about choice. For most people, marriage and courtship were shaped by duty, family needs, and survival rather than personal feeling. Dating, as we understand it today, did not exist. Instead, relationships were guided by expectations set long before two people ever met. Families decided what made sense. Land, alliances, labor, and social standing mattered more than affection. This created a quiet distance between what people felt inside and what they were expected to do. Imagine being young in the medieval world, surrounded by others but rarely asked what you wanted. Your future partner might be someone you barely knew. Conversations before marriage were limited and carefully watched. Touch was restricted. Privacy was rare. Any sign of affection outside accepted boundaries could lead to punishment, shame, or loss of reputation. Because of this, emotions were often kept hidden. Love, when it appeared, lived quietly inside the heart, rarely spoken aloud. For many women especially, dating was not a gentle process. Their value was often measured by family honor, workability, and fertility rather than personality or desire. Courtship happened through family discussions. not personal connection. A woman might see her future husband only a few times before marriage. There was little space to grow comfortable or form trust. This uncertainty created anxiety, even when the match was considered good by others. Men also lived under pressure. They were expected to provide stability, protection, and labor. Choosing freely was a luxury few could afford. Romance existed mostly in stories, songs, and poetry, offering an escape from reality. These stories spoke of knights and secret love, but real life remained practical and restrained. The contrast between these romantic ideals and daily experience often created quiet disappointment. After marriage, love was expected to grow over time, not begin before. Couples learned to live together through shared work and routine. Some did find comfort and affection slowly, while others simply endured. Dating in this sense was not a phase but a lifetime process of adjustment. There were no grand gestures or dramatic confessions. Love was shown through reliability, shared labor, and quiet presence. As you imagine this world, notice how heavy and serious relationships felt. There was little room for experimentation or personal exploration. Dating was not about discovering yourself or another person. It was about fitting into a role and meeting expectations. This is another reason why medieval dating feels so distant from modern life. As the night grows quiet again, allow these thoughts to soften. You do not need to hold on to them. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and gentle. In the next part, we will gently explore how marriage changed daily life and how affection survived within strict rules. For now, remain calm. Let rest continue naturally. By the time two people in medieval society reached the point where marriage was even being discussed, the idea of love had already been shaped, limited, and carefully controlled by many outside forces. Dating, as we understand it today, did not truly exist. There were no private conversations meant only for emotional connection, no long talks about personal dreams, and no freedom to explore feelings openly. Instead, relationships moved slowly under watchful eyes, shaped by family expectations, social rules, and survival needs. Love, if it appeared at all, had to fit quietly into a life already decided by others. Most young people did not choose who they would spend their lives with. Matches were arranged based on land, labor, alliances, or reputation. Feelings were considered unreliable and even dangerous. A person was expected to grow into affection after marriage, not before it. Because of this, early interactions were often stiff and cautious. A young man and woman might only see each other during community events, religious gatherings, or supervised visits. Words exchanged were polite and limited. Body language was restrained. Every gesture carried weight, because reputation mattered more than romance. Courtship, when it happened, was slow and restrained. A man might show interest through service, such as helping a family with work, offering protection, or showing steady behavior over time. Gifts were simple and practical, not romantic. A woman's response was rarely spoken openly. Instead, interest was shown through small signs like continued presence, quiet cooperation, or respectful attention. Everything happened within strict boundaries. Being seen alone together could lead to gossip, punishment, or loss of honor. Privacy was almost non-existent. Homes were crowded, villages were close. Everyone knew everyone else's business. This meant that emotional connection had to grow quietly, if it grew at all. Many relationships never reach that point. People learn to suppress longing and accept duty. Love stories existed mostly in songs and tales, not in daily life. For most, marriage was a practical arrangement meant to secure food, safety, and continuity, not emotional fulfillment. Religion also shaped dating deeply. The church taught restraint, obedience, and control of desire. Physical closeness before marriage was forbidden, and even emotional attachment could be seen as improper. Confession, fear of sin, and moral pressure kept many people distant from their own feelings. Desire was something to manage, not explore. This made relationships emotionally quiet, sometimes distant, and often confusing for those experiencing strong feelings they could not express. For women especially, dating was less about choice and more about transition. A woman moved from her father's household to her husband's, with little time to understand herself as an individual. Romantic desire was rarely discussed. Safety, fertility, and obedience were valued far more. Many women entered marriage knowing very little about their partner beyond reputation and family background. Emotional closeness, if it developed, came much later, slowly, and without guidance. Men also lived under pressure. They were expected to provide, protect, and obey social structure. Expressing vulnerability or emotional need was discouraged. Love was something to prove through work and responsibility, not words. Many men never learned how to express affection openly, even within marriage. Relationships were built on roles rather than understanding. As you imagine this world, notice how quiet and heavy dating feels. There is no excitement, no freedom, and very little choice. Love, when it existed, had to survive within strict limits. Many people lived their entire lives without experiencing romance as we know it today. This is why dating in medieval times was not joyful or playful, but serious, controlled, and often emotionally distant. As the night grows quiet, allow this image to fade slowly. You do not need to hold on to it. Let your breathing soften. Let your body rest. In the next part, the story will continue gently, exploring how marriage itself felt after this quiet and limited courtship. For now, remain still, let the calm continue. As medieval life moved slowly from season to season, love also moved at the same gentle pace. Dating, as we understand it today, did not exist. But quiet emotional connections still formed in small, careful ways. Love was rarely loud or openly expressed. It lived in shared glances, in familiar routines, and in moments that felt ordinary on the surface, but meaningful inside. A young man and woman might see each other often at the well, in the fields, or during church gatherings, yet never speak freely. Words were limited, but presence itself carried meaning. Simply being near each other again and again was often the closest thing to romance. Affection was shown through actions rather than touch or speech. A small kindness like saving a seat, offering help with work, or sharing food carried deep emotional weight. These gestures were noticed and remembered because they were rare. Physical closeness was restricted by social rules, family expectations, and religious beliefs. Because of this, even small moments felt intense and important. Love grew slowly, shaped by patience rather than excitement. The heart learned to wait. Families remained closely involved in every stage of these relationships. Parents watched carefully, not always harshly, but with concern for reputation and survival. Love alone was not enough. Compatibility, land, labor, and family ties mattered deeply. Because of this, many feelings remained unspoken. People learned to carry affection quietly, knowing it might never be allowed to grow further. This quiet acceptance became part of emotional life. Marriage, when it finally happened, was often less about romance and more about stability. Yet that did not mean affection never developed later. Many couples learned to care for each other slowly over time, sharing work, hardship, and daily routines. Love after marriage was often built, not discovered. It grew out of shared survival rather than excitement. Nights were quiet. Conversations were simple. Life together was steady, even if it lacked passion. For those whose love never led to marriage, memory played a powerful role. A brief connection could stay in the mind for years. A single season of closeness might be remembered quietly for a lifetime. There were no letters exchanged freely, no photographs kept, and no public acknowledgement. Love lived only in memory and routine. This made it feel fragile, but also deeply personal. As you imagine this slow and quiet world of medieval dating, notice how different it feels from modern life. There is no rush here, no constant communication, no clear beginnings or endings. Love exists gently, shaped by time, patience, and restraint. It is neither dramatic nor loud. It is calm, subtle, and often unfinished. As the night grows quiet now, allow this gentle image of medieval love to soften and fade. You do not need to remember every detail. Let the feeling remain instead. Stay still. Let your breathing slow. Let rest continue naturally, carrying you deeper into calm sleep. As the years moved forward in the medieval world, dating and relationships did not pause or change suddenly, but slowly shifted as people aged. Love was not something only for the young, yet age shaped how relationships were formed and understood. In medieval times, growing older did not bring the freedom it sometimes brings today. Instead, age often brought responsibility, limitation, and quiet acceptance of one's place in life. For many, romance softened with time, becoming less about excitement and more about stability, companionship, and survival. For those who married young, which was common, dating as we imagine it rarely returned later in life. Love settled into routine. Days were filled with work, family duties, and shared hardship. Affection existed, but it was expressed quietly, through cooperation and shared effort rather than words. A glance across a room, a shared task completed in silence, or simple trust became the language of love. Romance did not disappear. It changed shape, becoming calmer and less visible. For widows and widowers, dating again was complicated and cautious. Loss was common in medieval life, and many people found themselves alone again at a relatively young age. Even then, forming a new relationship was rarely driven by emotion alone. Practical concerns returned to the center. Who could provide support? Who could manage land or household work? Who could fit into an existing family? Feelings mattered, but they were carefully weighed against survival. Love had to make sense before it could be felt openly. As people aged further, opportunities for new romance grew fewer. Social circles shrank. Physical strength faded. Community expectations became stricter rather than softer. Older individuals were often expected to step back, to guide quietly rather than seek new beginnings. Romantic desire did not vanish, but it was rarely acknowledged. It existed privately, unspoken, carried quietly through long evenings and silent nights. Time itself shaped medieval love deeply. There was little illusion that life was long or guaranteed. This awareness made some relationships feel urgent in youth and resigned in later years. Dating was never endless or experimental. Choices carried weight because time felt limited. This made love serious from the beginning, but it also made missed chances linger quietly, sometimes for a lifetime. As you imagine this slow passing of time, notice how gentle and heavy it feels at once. Love was not dramatic or loud. It was patient, shaped by years rather than moments. This is another way medieval dating differed from modern life. Romance did not race forward. It walked slowly, hand in hand with time, responsibility, and acceptance. As the night grows quiet now, allow these thoughts of time and love to soften and fade. You do not need to hold on to them. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and easy. Allow rest to continue gently, without effort. As medieval life continued, it became more and more clear that love, as we understand it today, was not the center of dating or marriage. In most medieval communities, love was expected to grow later, not come first. Relationships began as agreements, guided by family needs, social position, and survival. Parents, elders, and sometimes entire communities played a role in deciding who should be together. A young man or woman might meet their future partner only a few times before marriage, sometimes only once, sometimes not at all. This lack of choice shaped emotions in quiet but powerful ways. Imagine growing up knowing that your future partner would be chosen for you. From a young age, people were taught to accept this as normal. There was little rebellion, not because people did not feel curiosity or attraction, but because survival depended on cooperation. Marriage joined land, labor, families, and protection. Love was considered unstable, something that could distract from duty. Because of this, emotional attachment before marriage was often discouraged, especially for women. Feelings were expected to be controlled, hidden, and managed carefully. For women, dating did not exist as a private experience. Any interaction with a potential partner happened under watchful eyes. Conversations were brief and polite. Touch was rare and often forbidden. A woman's reputation was closely tied to her family's honor, so even rumors could cause harm. This constant supervision created distance, making emotional connections slow and uncertain. Feelings, when they appeared, were kept quiet, sometimes never spoken at all. Men also lived with limits, though different ones. A man's ability to marry depended on his work, land, and social standing. Romantic desire meant little if he could not support a household. Courtship involved proving stability rather than affection. Gifts were practical, not emotional. Promises were measured, not poetic. This made dating feel formal and restrained, lacking the freedom to explore emotions openly. Despite these limits, attraction still existed. Small moments carried meaning. A glance held a little longer than necessary. A shared walk under supervision. A simple exchange of words remembered for days. Because opportunities were rare, even small interactions felt important. These quiet moments became the foundation of emotional connection, slow and fragile, shaped by patience rather than passion. As the night grows quieter, Imagine how heavy this emotional restraint must have felt. Love was not something you searched for freely. It was something you hoped would grow later, after duty was fulfilled. This created relationships built on endurance and adjustment rather than choice. Some found comfort in this structure. Others lived with quiet longing, never fully knowing what love could have been. This is another reason medieval dating feels so distant from modern life. It was not about finding a soulmate, but about fitting into a system that valued order over emotion. Love, when it arrived, had to adapt to that system, growing slowly, often silently, within strict boundaries. As these thoughts begin to soften, allow them to fade into the background. Let your breathing remain slow and steady. Let your body stay still and relaxed. In the next part, we will gently explore how marriage changed these relationships and what daily life was like after dating ended and duty began. For now, remain still. Let the quiet deepen. Let rest continue in its own time. By the time medieval dating reached its later stages, love had already learned to move slowly and carefully, shaped by rules that left very little room for personal choice. For most people, affection did not grow from freedom but from patience. A young man and woman could not decide on their own to spend time together. Every meeting required permission, every glance carried meaning, and every word spoken was remembered. Love unfolded quietly, often without certainty and sometimes without hope of a future together. Marriage was rarely about romance. It was about land, family ties, and survival. Even when two people felt close, their feelings could be set aside if families decided otherwise. This taught people to guard their hearts. Emotions were kept gentle and controlled, never allowed to grow too fast. Love was something that lived inside, not something openly shared. This restraint made relationships slow and calm, but also fragile. Nothing was promised, and nothing was guaranteed. Time moved differently in medieval dating. Weeks or months could pass between meetings. Letters, if they existed at all, were rare and carefully written. Waiting became part of love itself. Waiting to see someone again. Waiting for approval. Waiting to know if a match would even be allowed. This waiting was not dramatic. It was quiet and constant, like a background feeling that never fully disappeared. Physical closeness was limited and heavily watched. Even simple gestures like holding hands or standing too close carried risk. Because of this, emotional connection often grew deeper than physical connection. People learned to read tone, posture, and silence. Small moments mattered. A shared smile, a familiar voice, or a quiet walk under supervision could feel meaningful and complete on its own. For many, love never reached marriage. Some relationships faded quietly, not because feelings ended, but because circumstances made continuation impossible. There was no dramatic breakup, just distance, silence, life moving on. These unfinished connections became part of a person's inner world, carried quietly without expression. As you imagine this slow and careful form of dating, notice how calm it feels, yet how heavy it can be. Love existed, but it was controlled. Affection was real, but it was limited. This was another truth of medieval dating. It was not about excitement or freedom, but about patience, restraint, and acceptance. As the night grows quiet again, allow this image to soften. Let these thoughts drift slowly into the background. You do not need to hold on to them. Let your breathing stay slow. Let your body remain still. Allow rest to continue gently, without effort. By the time we reach this part of medieval dating, it becomes clear that love in those days did not arrive suddenly, loudly, or dramatically. It arrived slowly, almost without being noticed at first. For many people, affection grew out of familiarity rather than excitement. Two people might see each other again and again in the same village, at the same well, during the same festivals, or while working in nearby fields. There was no rush to define feelings. There was no pressure to confess love. Time itself did most of the work. Weeks turned into months and months into years before emotions were ever spoken aloud, if they were spoken at all. Dating in medieval times often meant simply being allowed to exist near someone, sitting within sight of each other during gatherings, walking the same path home from church, always at a respectful distance, exchanging brief glances rather than words. These small moments carried meaning because they were rare and carefully controlled. Every interaction was watched by family, neighbors, and the community. Because of this, affection had to remain quiet. Loud emotion was seen as dangerous, immature, or improper. Love learned to speak in silence. For many couples, the deepest connection came not from romance, but from shared routine. Working side by side during harvest, helping each other's families during hard seasons, standing together during long religious services. These shared experiences created trust slowly. Trust mattered more than passion. A person who was reliable, patient, and steady was valued far more than someone exciting or charming. In a world where survival depended on cooperation, love grew from dependability. Physical closeness remained limited even after feelings were understood. Touch was rare and often accidental. A hand brushing another while passing an object, standing close enough to feel warmth during winter gatherings. These small moments carried intense meaning because they were not taken for granted. There was no culture of casual touch. Because of this, even the smallest contact could stay in memory for a long time. Marriage, when it finally happened, did not feel like the beginning of love. For many, it felt like permission for love to finally exist openly. Only after marriage could two people walk together freely, speak openly, and share space without fear of judgment. Love, in many cases, deepened after marriage rather than before it. Affection was allowed to grow safely once rules no longer restricted it. Still, not all medieval dating led to marriage. Some feelings were never acted on. Some connections faded quietly as people were matched with others for practical reasons. Love was often sacrificed for stability, family needs, or survival. This did not always create anger or drama. It created quiet acceptance. People learned early that life did not always follow the heart. Emotional restraint was considered strength. As you imagine this world of slow, restrained affection, notice how different it feels from modern dating. There is no constant communication, no instant connection, no pressure to define feelings quickly. Everything moves slowly, shaped by time, patience, and silence. Love exists, but it is gentle, careful, and often hidden. As the night grows quiet now, let this image soften and fade. Let the idea of slow love rest gently in your mind. There is nothing you need to remember. Just allow the calm rhythm of this past world to carry you toward rest. As medieval life continued at its unhurried pace, the idea of dating remained deeply tied to patience rather than excitement. Love did not arrive suddenly, and it was never rushed. People spent long periods simply observing one another from a distance, often through shared work, family gatherings, or religious events. A young man might see the same woman week after week at the market or during church services, exchanging only brief glances or polite words. These small moments carried meaning because there were so few of them. Interest grew slowly, shaped by routine rather than bold action. Communication between two people was limited and careful. There were no private conversations the way we imagine them today. Words were chosen gently, often spoken in the presence of others. A simple greeting, a respectful question, or a shared task could serve as a quiet sign of affection. Because opportunities were rare, people paid close attention to tone, posture, and small gestures. A moment of kindness or a soft smile could linger in the mind for days, sometimes weeks. Time itself played an important role in how relationships formed. Life moved according to seasons rather than schedules. Planting, harvesting, and religious calendars shaped daily routines. Because of this, relationships unfolded slowly, following the same rhythm as the land. There was no pressure to define feelings quickly. Waiting was normal and patience was expected. Love was allowed to grow gradually without urgency. Emotional expression was subtle. Strong feelings were rarely shown openly. Instead, care was expressed through responsibility and reliability, showing up consistently, helping with work, and respecting family expectations mattered more than romantic words. Trust developed through shared presence over time rather than private confessions. This created a quieter form of intimacy, one that felt steady rather than intense. As you imagine this slow unfolding of affection, notice how calm it feels. There is no rush toward a future moment. No need to prove anything quickly. Love exists within everyday life, moving gently alongside it. This quiet approach made relationships feel grounded, shaped by time rather than excitement. As the night grows quiet now, let this image soften in your mind. Let the slow rhythm of medieval life continue gently in the background. In the next part, we will move deeper into how long engagements and family approval shaped the emotional experience of love even further. For now, remain still. Let the quiet deepen. Let rest continue in its own time. As medieval life moved forward, it became clearer that dating was never truly about personal choice or emotional excitement. Love followed duty, tradition, and family needs more than the heart's wishes. People grew up understanding that relationships were part of responsibility, not self-expression. From a young age, boys and girls watched adults speak quietly about marriage as something practical, something decided, not something discovered. This shaped how feelings were experienced. Emotions were not ignored, but they were kept small, controlled, and often unspoken. For many, affection developed slowly after marriage rather than before it. Couples learned about each other through shared work, shared silence, and shared routine. There were no long conversations about feelings, no promises spoken softly under the stars. Instead, love grew in ordinary moments, preparing food together, walking the same path each day, sitting quietly near the fire after a long day. This kind of connection was not dramatic, but it was steady. It did not rush. It did not demand attention. It settled gently into daily life. Romantic longing, when it appeared, was often carried quietly inside. Expressing desire openly could bring trouble, judgment, or punishment. Because of this, people learned to manage their emotions carefully. A glance held slightly longer, a kind word spoken at the right moment. These small gestures carried meaning without drawing attention. Dating was subtle, indirect, and often invisible to outsiders. Love existed, but it lived quietly, hidden beneath layers of tradition. Courtship rituals, where they existed, followed strict rules. Families watched closely. Communities noticed everything. Privacy was rare. Time together was limited and often supervised. Because of this, relationships developed slowly. Trust took time. Familiarity came through repetition rather than excitement. Love did not feel like a sudden spark. It felt like something that slowly warmed over time, like a fire kept low but steady. As years passed, many accepted this way of life without resistance. It was all they knew. Dating as we imagine it today did not exist, and so it was not missed. People found meaning in stability rather than passion. Security mattered more than excitement. Companionship mattered more than romance. This shaped a quieter, calmer understanding of love, one rooted in patience rather than desire. As you imagine this world now, notice how different it feels. Love moves slowly. Voices stay soft. Feelings are held gently, not displayed. This was medieval dating at its core. Not loud, not dramatic, but woven quietly into everyday life. As the night grows calm again, allow this image to fade softly. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and easy. Allow rest to continue gently, in its own time. As medieval life slowly moved forward, it became clear that dating was never truly about personal choice or emotional desire. Love, as we understand it today, was not the foundation of relationships. Instead, partnerships were shaped by survival, family needs, land, and social order. For many people, especially women, dating was something that happened around them, rather than something they controlled. Feelings were often kept quiet, hidden beneath layers of duty and expectation. The heart learned early that it was not the one making decisions. Most young people did not spend time getting to know someone privately. There were no quiet walks meant for romance. No long conversations meant only for two people. Meetings happened under watchful eyes, guided by family members, neighbors, or elders. Every interaction carried meaning, and every word could be remembered and repeated. Because of this, emotional expression was careful and limited. People learned to communicate feelings indirectly, through small gestures, shared glances, or quiet moments that passed quickly. Marriage arrangements often began long before any emotional connection formed. Families discussed matches based on benefit rather than compatibility. Who owned land? Who needed support? Who could strengthen alliances? In this system, dating was not a journey toward love, but a step toward responsibility. Even when affection grew later, it was secondary to obligation. Many entered lifelong partnerships without ever feeling the freedom to choose. For women especially, dating was something that happened within strict boundaries. Their behavior reflected not only on themselves, but on their entire family. A single rumor could change a future. Because of this, caution shaped every interaction. Even kindness could be misunderstood. Even laughter could be questioned. This pressure taught restraint, turning natural curiosity into quiet observation. Men experienced limits as well, though different in nature. They were expected to prove stability, strength, and usefulness. Emotional vulnerability was rarely encouraged. Expressions of affection were often replaced with demonstrations of reliability. Love was something shown through work, duty, and provision rather than words or closeness. Because private connection was rare, many people carried unspoken feelings throughout their lives. Love existed, but often without expression. It lived quietly, sometimes never acted upon. This created a world where the heart learned patience, silence, and acceptance. Romance was not absent, but it was restrained, shaped by the reality of medieval survival. As you imagine this slow, careful world of connection, notice how different it feels from modern dating. There is no rush, no freedom, and no certainty. Relationships formed slowly, under pressure, and often without joy. This is one of the deepest truths about medieval dating. It was less about finding love and more about fitting into a life already decided. As the night grows quieter now, allow this image to soften. You do not need to hold on to it. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing slow naturally. Allow rest to continue gently as the story fades into the background. As medieval life moves slowly forward, one thing became very clear in relationships of that time. Love was rarely about choice. For most people, dating was not a journey of discovering feelings or exploring connection. It was a quiet path shaped by family needs, survival, and social rules. Many men and women entered relationships without ever asking themselves what they truly wanted. Instead, they learned to accept what was decided for them. Over time, this acceptance became normal, and personal desire slowly faded into the background of daily life. In medieval times, silence played a large role in relationships. Feelings were rarely spoken openly. Love letters were uncommon for ordinary people. Public affection was limited or discouraged. Most emotions were expressed through small actions rather than words. A shared task, a quiet walk, or sitting near one another could mean more than spoken promises. Because words were few, misunderstandings were common. People often guessed how the other felt, sometimes correctly, sometimes not. This guessing added emotional distance even within close relationships. Romance, as we imagine it today, was not a central part of dating. There were no long conversations about feelings, no late-night talks, and no open discussions about the future. Instead, relationships grew slowly through routine. Two people learned about each other by working side by side, sharing meals, and surviving hard days together. Love, if it appeared, came quietly, not suddenly. It was shaped by patience rather than passion. Many people learned to suppress strong emotions. Showing too much feeling could be seen as weakness or foolishness. Especially for women, expressing desire openly could lead to judgment or danger. Because of this, love often lived inside the mind rather than being shared openly. This inner world of unspoken emotion could be comforting at times, but it could also feel lonely. Loving someone without being able to say it created a quiet ache that many carried throughout their lives. As years passed, people adjusted to this emotional restraint. They learned to find comfort in stability rather than romance. Safety, shared responsibility, and routine became more important than excitement. Over time, This created relationships that were steady but emotionally distant. Some found peace in this simplicity. Others quietly wondered what love might feel like if it were free to grow without rules. As you imagine this world of quiet relationships and unspoken feelings, notice how calm yet heavy it feels. There is no drama here, no heartbreak told loudly, only lives lived carefully and emotions kept inside. This is another reason why dating in medieval times felt so different from today. Love existed, but it moved slowly, silently, and often without choice. As the night grows quiet once more, allow these thoughts to soften and drift away. You do not need to hold on to them. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and gentle. Allow rest to continue calmly, in its own time. By the time we reach this part of the story, it becomes very clear that medieval dating was rarely about personal choice. Love, as we understand it today, was not the center of relationships. Instead, dating existed inside a much larger system of family duty, survival, and social order. Most people did not wake up thinking about romance. They woke up thinking about food, work, weather, and safety. Relationships grew slowly inside these concerns, not outside of them. This made dating feel less exciting and more serious even from the very beginning. Imagine living in a small medieval village where everyone knows each other. Privacy is rare. Choices are limited. If a young man or woman shows interest in someone, that interest is noticed quickly by families and neighbors. Dating does not happen quietly. There are no private messages or secret meetings that go unnoticed for long. Every interaction is observed, remembered, and often discussed. This constant attention removes the feeling of freedom. Even simple conversations carry weight because they can lead to expectations. Families played a powerful role in shaping relationships. Parents and elders often guided or controlled who could be considered a suitable partner. Marriage was seen as an agreement between families, not just individuals. Land, work skills, family reputation, and social standing mattered more than emotional connection. Because of this, dating often felt like preparation for marriage rather than a time of discovery. People learned quickly that feelings were secondary to responsibility. Courtship moved slowly and carefully. Meetings happened in shared spaces under watchful eyes. A walk near the village edge, a shared task, or a conversation during a festival might be the closest thing to a date. Words were chosen carefully. Promises were rare. Showing too much affection too soon could damage reputations, especially for women. This made dating quiet and restrained, filled with pauses and unspoken thoughts. Love did exist, but it was not always celebrated. When two people felt strongly for each other but lacked family approval, their situation became painful rather than romantic. There were few ways to change outcomes. Running away was dangerous and rare. Disobedience carried long-lasting consequences. For many, love became something to manage quietly rather than pursue openly. Over time, people adjusted their expectations. They learned not to imagine too much. Dating became something practical, focused on stability rather than passion. Shared values, work habits, and family compatibility mattered more than excitement. In this way, medieval dating often felt calm on the surface but heavy underneath, carrying the weight of future responsibilities. As you imagine this world, notice how different it feels from modern dating. There is less choice, less freedom, and less space to explore emotions safely. Dating is not a personal journey, but a social process shaped by rules and tradition. This is why medieval dating often felt serious, quiet, and emotionally restrained. As the night grows quiet, allow this image to soften and fade. You do not need to hold on to it. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing slow naturally. Rest can continue gently, without effort. As medieval life slowly moved toward its quieter hours, it became clear that dating, as we understand it today, almost never belonged fully to the heart. Love was present, but it lived in the background, often unspoken and rarely allowed to guide decisions. Relationships were shaped by family needs, social rules, land, and survival. Feelings were considered uncertain and dangerous, something that could disturb balance rather than create it. Because of this, many people learned to keep their emotions gentle and contained, allowing affection to exist quietly without letting it take control. Love was something felt slowly, often after marriage, not before it. For many couples, closeness grew through shared daily life rather than romantic pursuit. Working together, eating together, surviving winters together slowly created bonds. This kind of connection was calm and practical, built on routine instead of excitement. There were no grand confessions or dramatic moments. Love appeared in small actions, like shared silence, familiar presence, and steady support. Over time, this created a different kind of intimacy, one that was quiet and stable rather than passionate and expressive. At the same time, many people carried private feelings they could never act on. A glance held too long, a thought never spoken, a moment remembered quietly. These emotions were rarely shared because acting on them could bring shame, punishment, or loss of security. So feelings stayed internal, becoming part of a person's inner life rather than their outward behavior. This created a calm but restrained emotional world, where longing existed without movement. As years passed, people accepted this structure as normal. Dating was not about discovery or choice. It was about fitting into a place already prepared for you. Personal happiness was less important than family stability and social order. This acceptance did not always bring sadness. Often, it brought a quiet peace. Expectations were low, and life was lived within clear boundaries. In this way, medieval dating felt steady, predictable, and emotionally contained. As you imagine this world now, notice how different it feels from modern ideas of romance. Love existed, but it moved slowly and carefully. It did not rush or demand attention. It waited quietly, shaped by time and routine. This was the reality of dating in medieval times, calm, restrained, and deeply tied to survival rather than desire. As the night grows quiet, allow this understanding to soften and fade. You do not need to hold on to it. Let your breathing remain slow. Let your body rest easily. The story will continue gently from here. As medieval life moved forward, many relationships slowly changed their shape, not because love disappeared, but because duty grew heavier with time. In the beginning, there may have been soft moments of excitement, shy glances, or quiet hopes shared between two people. But once marriage settled in, daily survival took over. Fields needed work, homes needed care, children arrived early and often, and life became focused on endurance rather than romance. Love was not expected to stay bright and expressive. Instead, it was meant to become steady, quiet, and useful. A good relationship was not measured by affection, but by cooperation, patience, and shared effort. As years passed, couples often spent more time working side by side than speaking to each other. Conversation happened while preparing food, tending animals, or repairing simple tools. There was little time set aside just for each other. Silence was common, not uncomfortable but normal. Many couples grew used to each other's presence without needing words. Love became something felt through routine rather than emotion. A shared meal, a familiar rhythm of work, or the quiet comfort of another person nearby at night replaced the excitement that modern people often expect from romance. Emotional expression remained limited. Saying loving words openly was still uncommon, especially in public. Feelings were shown through action rather than speech. A partner who worked hard, stayed loyal, and protected the household was seen as loving, even if affection was rarely spoken. Arguments happened, but they were often brief and practical, focused on survival rather than feelings. There was little space for emotional reflection, and most people accepted this as the natural shape of life. As age arrived, companionship became more important than romance. Many couples leaned on each other for stability rather than passion. Loss, illness, and hardship were common, and having someone familiar nearby brought comfort. Even if love had never been openly expressed, years of shared struggle created a deep bond. This bond was quiet and rarely celebrated, but it was strong in its own way. Looking back at medieval dating and relationships, it becomes clear that love was not designed to be exciting or expressive. It was designed to help people survive. Romance existed briefly, softly, and often privately, before being reshaped by responsibility. For many, love did not disappear. It simply became quieter, slower, and less visible. As the night grows quiet now, let this image of medieval love settle gently into the background. There is nothing dramatic here, only steady lives moving forward together. Allow your breathing to slow. Let your body remain still. Let the story fade as rest continues calmly, in its own time. By the time medieval life had carried couples through many seasons, dating no longer felt like a beginning. It felt like a gentle continuation of shared existence. There were no anniversaries marked with gifts or special words, no celebrations focused on romance alone. Instead, closeness was built through repetition, seeing the same face each morning, working side by side in familiar routines, sharing small moments that were never spoken about, yet slowly became meaningful. Love, in this stage, was quiet and deeply woven into daily life, not separate from it. Affection showed itself in practical ways. A shared piece of bread, a cloak offered on a cold evening, help given without being asked. These small actions carried more meaning than words ever could. In a world where survival mattered, care was shown through effort. Romance was not about excitement or novelty. It was about reliability. Knowing someone would be there tomorrow and the day after that brought comfort that replaced passion over time. As years passed, couples rarely spoke openly about love. They did not need to. Their connection existed in shared silence, in unspoken understanding. Sitting together at the end of a long day, listening to the sounds of the village settle into night, was often enough. There was no pressure to express feelings, no expectation to constantly prove affection. Love was assumed once it had been established, and it rested quietly in the background of life. Dating, if it could still be called that, faded into companionship. The idea of seeking someone new rarely appeared. Life was too demanding, time too valuable. Bonds, once formed, were held on too carefully. Even when relationships were not perfect, familiarity brought stability. Stability was valued far more than emotional fulfillment. In this way, medieval love grew calm and steady, shaped more by endurance than by desire. As you imagine this slow rhythm, notice how peaceful it feels. There is no chasing, no urgency, no fear of missing out. Just time moving gently forward, carrying two lives alongside each other. This was the quiet heart of medieval dating, not dramatic or passionate, but deeply rooted in shared living. As the night grows quiet now, let this image soften and fade. You do not need to remember every detail. Let the calm remain. Let your body stay still. Let your breathing slow naturally. Rest can continue gently and without effort, just as these medieval lives once did. As medieval life moved forward slowly, love and connection were never rushed, but they were also rarely chosen freely. By the time people reached the later stages of relationships, much had already been decided for them. Families, land needs, and social rules shaped almost every bond. Dating was not about discovery or excitement. It was about acceptance. Two people often learned to live with each other long before they learned to truly know each other. Affection, when it appeared, grew quietly over time, shaped by shared routines rather than romance. In many cases, couples spent years together without ever speaking openly about feelings. Love was shown through actions, not words. Helping with daily work, sharing food, or protecting one another from hardship became the language of closeness. There were no private conversations under the stars meant only for pleasure. Most moments were practical, yet inside this simplicity, some bonds grew strong, not passionate in a dramatic way, but steady, patient, and deeply familiar. Women especially lived within narrow choices. Once matched or promised, their future path became fixed. Dating did not offer freedom or exploration. It offered preparation for responsibility. Emotional needs were often set aside in favor of survival and stability. Over time, many learned to quiet their desires, finding comfort in routine rather than hope. Love became something that fit inside daily life, not something that reshaped it. Men, too, felt pressure, though differently. They were expected to provide, protect, and follow family decisions. Romance was seen as unreliable, even dangerous. Choosing love over duty could bring shame or conflict. Because of this, emotions were controlled and rarely shared. Relationships grew within limits shaped by silence and expectation. As years passed, many medieval couples settled into a quiet companionship. The excitement modern people associate with dating rarely existed. Instead, there was familiarity. Knowing how the other moved, spoke, and worked. Knowing their habits, their strengths, and their silences. This familiarity brought comfort even if passion never arrived. Love was not missing, but it was different. It was calm, restrained, and woven into everyday survival. As you imagine this slow, quiet form of connection, notice how gentle and heavy it feels at the same time. Dating was not a search for joy. It was a step toward endurance. This is another reason medieval dating felt so different from today. It was shaped by limits, patience, and the absence of choice. As the night grows quieter now, allow this image of medieval love to soften and fade. You do not need to hold it. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and easy. Allow rest to continue calmly, in its own time. As medieval life moved gently toward its later years, the idea of dating remained very different from what we imagine today. Love did not arrive suddenly or loudly. It did not rush forward with excitement or urgency. Instead, it grew slowly, often unnoticed at first, shaped by time, routine, and shared presence. People did not search for love actively. They lived their lives, worked their days, and allowed affection to form quietly within the limits of their world. In this slow environment, emotions had space to settle naturally, without pressure. For many couples, love developed through familiarity rather than passion. Seeing the same person at the well, at church, in the fields, or during shared meals slowly created comfort. Words were few, but meaning grew in the pauses between them. A look held a moment longer than usual. A small act of kindness repeated again and again. These were signs of affection that felt safe and appropriate in a world where open emotion was restrained. Dating in this sense was not an event, but a gradual shift in how two people noticed each other. Time played a central role in shaping relationships. Days moved slowly, and seasons mattered more than moments. Without constant distraction, people paid attention to small changes. Trust grew because it had time to grow. Love felt stable because it was built over months and years, not rushed through quick decisions. This slowness made relationships feel grounded, even when life itself was uncertain. There was also an understanding that love existed within limits. Social rules, family expectations, and community judgment shaped how relationships could unfold. People learned to accept these limits rather than fight them. Romance was quieter, but it was also calmer. There was less confusion, less emotional chaos. Feelings were carried gently, not displayed loudly. This restraint protected both individuals and the community, even if it limited personal expression. As people aged together, love changed form. Early affection became companionship. Shared hardship created deep bonds. Sitting together in silence became as meaningful as conversation. Love did not need constant confirmation. It existed in presence, in shared work, in enduring the same season side by side. Dating led not to excitement, but to continuity. As you imagine this quiet ending to medieval courtship, notice how calm it feels. Love was not something to chase. It was something to grow into slowly, patiently, over time. This gentle pace allowed relationships to feel steady and secure, even in a difficult world. As the night grows quiet now, allow this final image to soften and fade. You do not need to remember it clearly. Let your breathing remain slow. Let your body stay still. Allow rest to continue naturally as time itself continues, calm and unhurried. As we slowly come to the end of this long and gentle journey, it becomes clear that dating in medieval times was never about excitement or choice in the way we understand it today. It was a quiet process shaped by family, duty, survival, and tradition. Love did exist, but it grew slowly, often in small, careful moments rather than bold gestures. People learned to accept affection as something that developed over time, not something that arrived suddenly. This patience shaped how relationships felt, steady and calm, even when life itself was hard. For many people, marriage arrived before romance. Couples learned about each other after they were already joined. Shared work, shared meals, and shared struggles slowly built connection. Love was not something expected immediately. It was something hoped for quietly. In this way, medieval dating was less about emotion and more about endurance. Relationships survived because people stayed, not because they were constantly happy, but because staying was part of life. As years passed, couples grew into each other's presence. Familiarity replaced excitement, and comfort replaced passion. In a world filled with uncertainty, having someone beside you, someone known and steady, mattered more than dramatic romance. Love became something practical and grounding. It helped people face long winters, hard labor, illness, and loss. It was not loud, but it was strong in its own quiet way. Looking back now, medieval dating teaches us something gentle. It reminds us that love does not always need freedom to exist. Sometimes it grows within limits. Sometimes it survives because people learn to care slowly, patiently, and without expectation. In a life where so much was out of control, relationships offered a small sense of stability, even if they began without choice. As the night grows quiet, let these thoughts soften and drift away. You do not need to remember the details. Let the images fade gently. Imagine the candlelight dimming, the voices lowering, and the medieval world slowly resting. Allow your breathing to slow. Let your body feel heavy and supported. The story has reached its end, and there is nothing more you need to do. Good night, and sleep peacefully.